Hey everybody, it's Faye here, and in this video I wanted to talk to you about creating sacred space, okay? So this is something that we all need, and especially when life's really crazy busy, or really most importantly, even though many of us have been spending a lot of time at home, we actually need to make sure we have that personal space, a space which we're able to go to kind of retreat to, that feels good, that is for us to kind of regenerate our own energy. So I am just referring to my book, Plants That Speak, Souls That Sing, because there's a section in this which is about feeling rooted and finding our rhythm. And so I'm just going to talk you through an exercise in creating sacred space. And I'd love to hear from you about where your sacred spaces are and where you like to go. So yeah, finding your spot or knowing your spot is really, really crucial. So if you're blessed with lovely fine weather, and well, you can have a wonderful sacred spot outside. And there are many spots in my garden and in the woodlands around here where I walk that I love to go to, especially when the weather is fine. Even when it's rainy, I've got my special spot in the woods where I like to go and connect to a tree, for example. However, I've also got sacred spaces in my home where I work, because whenever I work with clients, whether it's Reiki, whether it's my shamanic work, or whether it's simply setting myself down for personal meditation and practice, or to even working through with clients through Zoom, I will set an intention and create my sacred space. So I have a sacred space, if you like. My office is my sort of sacred zone, but also there are, if you haven't got a space in your home, if you're not able to have a whole room dedicated to sacred space like me, well, what I suggest you do is, even if you have a favourite chair or a favourite cushion or a favourite blanket, actually even today I've got my kind of favourite shawl that I'm wearing to keep warm, to get myself feeling safe, secure and in my sacred space. So just think about where your sacred space is in your house, okay? And you want this to be somewhere where you can kind of retreat to, where you won't necessarily be too disturbed, or you can kind of sit back a bit and let the rest of your household do their thing, and they kind of know that you're in your zone. So yeah, if you've got a nice meditation stool or a seat or a cushion, and it's just sometimes nice to have like a special mug that you go to and you sit, and that's your kind of sacred space for having your cup of tea and so on. So, because you have to think, what do you want to do in your sacred space? My sacred space is generally because I need to set up a safe place so that I can feel the connection with myself, for reflection, for guidance, for understanding and kind of counsel. But also it's, for me, I like to create a sacred space whenever I work in my client work, whenever I want to connect with my guides and spirit world. So for most people, it's because we really need a benefit. There's great benefit in just finding that touchstone to connect with yourself, whether you have a regular meditation practice or not. I really recommend just having a space that you can go to, that is yours, that is your point to rest, recharge and just reset. And this might be a special, when you if you kind of create a sacred bath for yourself, like with rose petals and essential oils, and this is the zone where no one's going to disturb you for an hour, while you can play some nice music and create a sacred space, in your bathroom, for example. But when we are working in sacred space, we do want to cleanse our space. And there are so many different ways to do this, and you've probably heard me talk about many of these before. I always like to light a candle, and this is this real intention of letting the light in. If you're unable to light candles, or if it's just not safe because you've got young kids around, then you can get the kind of fake candles, or you can have other things which will represent the element of the fire, of the light. I also have a little bell, I haven't got it to hand unfortunately, which has a picture of the sun on it. So this for me is all about fire energy and light, bringing in the light. And sometimes people will have crystals that might represent this too. So I like to light a candle, and as I light the candle, I'm symbolically inviting in the light, and I invite in the flow of Reiki as well, which is, this beautiful light energy. I also like to burn essential oils or even incense, or maybe even lavender or mugwort or sage, to just cleanse the area of any energies that have built up over time. And whenever I'm working with plant materials, my first and foremost, I am inviting in the spirit of the plant with a prayer. Whenever we create sacred space, really, it's all about our intention. Druids and witches in their practice will simply create sacred space by casting a circle, by drawing a circle in the air with their arm and making that a circle of light. So there's such simplicity in creating sacred space, and it's really about tuning into whatever feels right for you. So if you don't have all these tools to hand, there's just no need to panic. We can create sacred space simply with our intention, and we can simply also invite the spirit of the plants in to help us create and cleanse the space. What we can do also is, keep our space clean and tidy so that physical clutter and dirt just doesn't build up. We can also open windows to allow the flow of fresh air in. We can also clap our hands to dispel energy. We can bang a drum really loudly, or play like really hard, really, uplifting music, or even like massive sort of heavy metal rock. I'm just thinking of heavy metal rock music to really like blast away any kind of stagnant energy or heavy feeling that there might be in a room, because this happens in places, especially if you're having a nice sacred spot at home and people are using your home for all sorts of different things, and you're sharing a building with other people. So there's so many different ways to cleanse your space. And actually, I have a prayer in my book, to a space clearing prayer, and I'll come on another live and I'll read that to you another day. What else? So I like to use essential oils as well. Frankincense and lavender are some of my favourites, really, for kind of bringing in, really just encouraging me to relax and be in that meditative state and connect with my higher self, because this is what I want to do when I'm in sacred space. Sacred space for me really is a place where I can connect to myself and to whatever else is wanting to give me messages that particular day. And also, if you practice Reiki, which I know many of you do, just simply inviting Reiki to flow and beaming Reiki out into the room for several minutes, or even using the symbols if you're Reiki level 2 and above, will just cleanse the space and create a space which is filled with light. What we want to do is we want to fill our space with light. We want to fill the space with light, absolute joy and wonder, to create a beautiful feeling of divine groundedness, nourishment, being that feeling of being held. So whenever I'm opening space, I'll invite in compassionate beings of light, and these could be angels, they could be my ancestors. I always, when I'm creating sacred space, will honour the spirit of the place where I'm at. So in this case, where I am at the moment, as I'm in one of the rooms in my house, and I do a lot of work here. So when I come here, I can feel it in my heart, the spirit of this place, the spirit of my home, the spirit of this house, which is, several centuries old and has had many households living here. And I'm also honouring the spirits of this land where my property stands and where I flow through in my day. So it's really important to honour the unseen when we're creating our sacred spaces, because we're not alone. And so when we're creating sacred space, it feels good and strong and grounded to nod, to invite in from your heart that unseen part of this sacred web which flows through us. So many of us might like to invite in the elements, like the water element, the earth, the wind, the fire element, for example. And we can do this by invocation. And again, in my book, I've got an example of an invocation that you can do, but you can simply do it by nodding to the element, by thanking the element, by placing it in your space. So you might have a candle, like I've mentioned, you might want a bowl of water, or something for you that's watery. You know, you might have a picture of a little mermaid, for example, or a fish to represent that element of water. I've got feathers, for example, to represent the element of air, but also on the, you know, with incense and the sort of aromatics that invokes the spirit of air as well. And obviously earth is always simple with all the plants and so on that I always have around me. But again, because I like to work with, and I feel very supported by the natural world, when I open my sacred space and create sacred space, I'm inviting in the natural world too. So this brings me on really to what many people like to have in their space is a sacred focal point, or an altar, or a shrine. And this is where you can get super creative. It's an element, it's an area that you can really, it's a holding space. It's like a container that holds your intentions, your prayers, whatever you're working on, whatever is challenging you. So for example, on my altar at the moment, I have my prayer pot, and I always have this prayer pot for my distance Reiki clients, but it's been particularly important in the last few months because of COVID-19. So that's been kind of regularly charged and it's held in this sacred space on my altar. I've also got a crystal grid set up, which is to help me and some of my personal goals, as well as objects which are sacred to me and objects which I find in nature and seem to leap out at me and want to be included. So when we connect with nature in this way, this is where we're inviting it in, we're nodding to it, we're honouring it, we're connecting with that big, wide, sacred web that holds us. And also this means that it flows with the seasons. So at the moment, my altar, for example, has lavender on it because I've been harvesting lavender. So there's fresh flowers throughout the summer. We're on the beach here, so I've got some seashells that I might pick up that kind of look at me. As we go into the autumn, there'll be more things like fallen leaves and twigs and pine cones, and maybe even some medicines that I'm making, infused oils and tinctures and so on, just so they sit on the altar and get that special vibration, because it's the focus of my intention and my concentration. And if the word altar sort of jars with you, if it sits badly with you, if it conjures up funny religious connotations, then think of it as a focal point, a place which holds your intentions, your affirmations, your goals, your energy, the things that you're trying to bring forward into your life, and also those challenges and sticky stuff, the stuff which you're also hoping to release. This is how we can use a sacred altar. And some people are super creative and they love to create beautiful mandalas out of flower petals and nature elements, and you can get super creative with your altar. If you've got family members who you're wanting to send love to, or loved ones, and I know at the moment we've not been able to like hug our friends and our family and see them as much, so you might want to have little photos of them or write their names so that they are in this special place on your altar, so that they know that you are thinking of them, and that's where your focus and your intention is. And it's really lovely. It feels really good. Rather than holding everything in your heart, rather than trying to carry all of that with you, and you're worrying and you're thinking and you're trying to be positive and you're carrying it all. If you've got a focal point, if you've got an altar space, if you've got this kind of shrine area which is magical and full of your positive energy and intention in your sacred space, this holds it. So you haven't got to always hold it in your heart and your head and carry it around with you, weigh you down. You've got it in this beautifully held container, and once you've got it out in the physical, you can invite in the other beautiful elements of the unseen, your spirit guides, your angels, beautiful compassionate light beings, and so on, and your power animals and everybody to help you with these intentions. So I find it's much better out than in. So yes, having this central sort of focal point or altar is lovely, and you can put on it, things which make you feel empowered. So these beautiful quotes and poetry and stuff to help you shift your mindset from having those loser thoughts which bring you down to having thoughts which empower you and help you step into your light. So if you fan of oracle cards, you can choose an oracle card for the week or every day and place that on your altar space. And this really helps you to set up sacred space and set up, you know, how you wish to be moving through life. So I'm obviously talking about sacred space for me in my altar. I'm here every day in this room in some capacity, or I'm going by it. So my shrine, my altar gets a lot of focus. It gets my attention a lot. If, for example, you're in a busy spot and you're like, well, I don't know where I can put this, you might have it on a tray where you can actually move it, you can shift it. So if you're creating sacred space, if you're creating like a lovely space for yourself, you've hidden away in the bathroom to have a lovely relaxing soak in the tub, well, take your tray with you with your candle and some crystals and an oracle card and tune in this way. We have to adapt to the way we're living our lives, knowing that we're sharing our space with different family members as well who have different sensitivities, and so yes, having a little tray is lovely. And I've mentioned it in a previous video that if you travel a lot, I used to have a handkerchief or a scarf, a lovely square scarf, a silk scarf, and in it I would just wrap up some objects which were sacred to me and were special to me and had meaning. And so I would place those on like the bedside the bedside table of the hotel room, and then I would know that I had that sacred, my sacred pieces with me, and that was my focal point for kind of my container for holding all that I needed to hold and work with, even while I was traveling and stuff. So when we create sacred space, it's beautiful, it's lovely, and it's a lovely idea, and it's a lovely ritual to have. Even just thinking in the morning about how do you want your day to flow, because we can have an intention to wake up every morning at 6 o'clock and sit in our sacred spot for half an hour and think about intentions and set ourselves up, but really what we need to do is we need to create sustainable things. And I know if I set myself that would not be sustainable for me. But having said that, if we don't spend time in our sacred spaces, like if we have a favourite tree in the woods that we haven't been to visit for months, or if we haven't really sat in our lovely meditation cushion and lit a candle for a long time, it's not going to feel as special as something that you visit often and give attention to. So just bear that in mind. For things to feel sacred, they have to be frequented by you with your intention and what's in your heart. So and I always say this, but what we blesses us in return. So if there's a place even in your garden or your home that doesn't feel quite as special as you would like, then definitely again give it some time, sit there, add some blessings, and try and create sacred space there and see what happens. Because by inviting in helping beings and compassionate beings and creating sacred space, we help to shift the vibration of places by putting our attention to them and creating places which are sacred. So what else am I going to say? Yes, and so when we spend time in our sacred space, it's just lovely to observe what's going on in your heart, observe what's going on around you, and feeling into the space and how different it will feel in different times. And also another thing is, don't restrict what you do in sacred space. So we sometimes, just because of the word sacred space and the idea of having an altar, that can sound like the only thing we can do in our space is sit and be quiet and meditate. But no, we can do whatever brings us joy, whatever we need guidance for. We can bring our computers in and work if that's what we want to do. Be creative and read and write and journal. It's whatever really makes your heart sing, and whatever you wish to invite assistance and help for. Because when we're in sacred space, I just feel like we're stepping out of the everyday, and we are creating an environment that's really filled with light in which we're a little bit more open to guidance from our inspiration or whatever else is around us. And that, I suppose, brings me on to, well, why can't every day just be lived from this space? And obviously, as a shamanic practitioner, that's something that I strive to do. I strive to really be in that space of, well, every moment is sacred, every space can be sacred. But, you know, in order to have that connection, having that physical sacred space that you can go to is a really good grounding point, especially when you're going through difficult and challenging times. To have a spot that you feel holds you, can comfort you, can support you, where you can just land and know that you are held with the feel of familiar energies and items around you is really, really comforting. And that's really something that we all need, especially when we're going through challenging times. So I've just got some more ideas for objects that you can put in your sacred space. So obviously I've mentioned things from the natural world, and I've talked about aromatherapy oils as well, and candles and fairy lights and things like that, and crystals and spring water or holy water, or even if you've been recently on holiday somewhere and you just love you had a swim in the sea, bring back some seawater in a little jar and have that in your sacred space as a lovely reminder. What else was I going to say here? I suppose, well, I think actually that's what I've covered. I've kind of said what I wanted to say in terms of checking out what I was reading from the book here, in terms of sacred space. But it's the essence is it's really whatever you want to make it, and every space can be sacred. And just because you're making it a sacred space, it doesn't mean to say that we have to be kind of holier than thou. And I think when I was did that just brings to mind something for me, like if you're preparing a lovely meal for friends and family, and you've been baking and creating all day in the kitchen, and you have some lovely candles on the table, and you're making this lovely offering of food and wine, and you might have even changed, and you've got your special outfit on, you've got your party outfit, you've got your lovely music on, and you've got this kind of beautiful intention that you're inviting these friends around, you're going to have fun, and you're going to share some laughter together and so on. That is sacred space in action, really. And I feel that that's what we really want to be achieving every single waking moment. And so if you're going into your office space every day, think about what can you bring in there that makes it feel more sacred, that makes it feel a space that nourishes and supports you, rather than a place that might feel a little bit challenging or aggressive or stressful at times. And it doesn't mean that you need to bring in candles and crystals and all sorts of sort of things which people might tease you about because they seem a bit woo-woo and not very, officey. You can be really creative about just bringing in things which are full of high vibration, like fresh flowers, an office plant, even having some inspirational quotes on a space in your desk that you can share with others can actually help create a more sacred environment for you at home and at your workplace, for example. So anyway, I hope that's given you some beautiful suggestions for sacred space, and I would love to see some pictures of your spaces and know what you like to place in your sacred space or where you like to go. So that's it from me, and check out Plants That Speak, Souls That Sing. You'll find it in all the usual places, and join the group Plant Spirit People if you haven't already, and you can find more videos like this on my YouTube channel, Fay Johnstone. Okay, bye.